She had been sitting outside the locked clinic for 40 minutes, not barking, not scratching, not running for shelter, just staring through the dark glass as if the person she loved was still breathing somewhere inside. At 11:37 on a cold Oregon night, the little town of Ashford had gone quiet beneath a thin curtain of rain. Main Street shone black under the streetlights, empty except for the soft glow of a closed laundromat, the blinking sign of a gas station 2 blocks away, and the small veterinary clinic with its front room dark and its open hours sign turned to the wall. In front of that clinic sat a German shepherd. She was 5 years old, maybe a little older, with a sable black and tan coat made darker by the rain, tall ears, and amber eyes fixed on one place beyond the glass door. Her name was Sadie, though no one on the street was there to say it. Water gathered along her whiskers and fell in slow drops to the sidewalk. Her paws were planted squarely on the concrete. Her body trembled from the cold, but she did not leave. Every few seconds, her ears lifted toward a sound no human walking past would have noticed. A faint shift, a small thud, then silence again. Staff Sergeant Nathan Brooks almost drove by without seeing her. His pickup rolled down Main Street with the heater low and the radio off, windshield wipers whispering across the glass. Nathan was 35, a white U.S. Marine with close-cut dark blonde hair, broad shoulders, and the kind of tired blue eyes that seemed to keep watch even when the rest of him wanted to disappear. He wore a dark field jacket over a gray shirt, jeans worn at the knees, and boots still dusty from the highway. He had left Portland 2 hours earlier after a veterans counseling appointment and was headed toward his late mother's small house outside town, a place he had not slept in since before his last deployment. He was not looking for trouble. He was not looking for a sign. Mostly, he was trying to get through one more night without remembering the one that had broken him. Then his headlights swept across the clinic windows and caught the dog's face. Nathan slowed. Something in the shepherd's posture made his hand tighten on the wheel. She did not look lost. Lost dogs pace. They sniff doorways. They follow headlights. This one sat like a sentry, like she had been ordered to guard a door until help arrived. Nathan pulled to the curb and shut off the engine. Rain tapped the roof of the truck in soft, uneven beats. For a moment, he just watched her through the windshield. Sadie turned her head toward him, and the look in her eyes moved through the glass, across the street, and straight into the place Nathan tried not to feel. It was not fear. It was urgency. He stepped out, raising one hand slowly. "Hey, girl," he said, his voice low against the rain. "What are you doing out here?" Sadie did not come to him. She stood, walked 2 careful steps to the clinic door, and placed one front paw against the lower edge of the glass. Then she looked back at Nathan. Inside the dark clinic, somewhere behind the front counter, something shifted again. This time Nathan heard it. A small sound. Weak. Human. His breath caught in his chest. Sadie's ears rose, and she gave one soft whine, not for herself, but for whoever was trapped beyond that door. Nathan crossed the street slowly, keeping his palm open where Sadie could see it, but the shepherd was no longer looking at him. Her whole body pointed toward the clinic door, every muscle held still except for the tremble running through her wet coat. The rain made soft rings in the puddles along the curb. Far down Main Street, the gas station sign buzzed in red and white. Everything else was quiet enough for Nathan to hear his own heartbeat under his jacket. He stepped onto the clinic's narrow front stoop and peered through the glass. The waiting room was dim, lit only by the weak emergency light near the hallway. A row of plastic chairs stood against one wall. A toppled brochure stand lay near the counter. Behind it, a yellow backpack rested on the floor, small and bright in the dark, the kind a child would carry to school. Nathan's stomach tightened. He reached for the handle. Locked. Sadie pressed closer, her nose almost touching the seam of the door. "Is someone in there?" Nathan called, firm but not loud. His voice moved through the glass and disappeared into the clinic. For a second, there was nothing. Then came a faint sound from behind the counter. Not a word, not even a cry, just the soft scrape of something shifting against tile. Sadie gave a low whine and looked up at him. Nathan pulled out his phone. One bar. He dialed 911, eyes never leaving the dark shape beyond the reception desk. The operator answered on the second ring. Nathan gave the address from the sign above the door, his name, and what he could see. "Possible child inside a locked veterinary clinic," he said. "Unknown condition. I heard movement." The operator told him help was being dispatched, and asked him to stay on the line. Nathan stayed calm because calm was what training had given him when everything else in life had become uncertain. But Sadie was not calm. She stepped back, paced once in a tight circle, then returned to the glass and lifted her paw again, tapping the lower panel. Not hard, not wild, precise, insistent. Nathan lowered his head until he could see through a clear streak in the rain on the door. Behind the counter, beyond the edge of a fallen shelf, he saw a hand. Small, still for one breath, then moving faintly. His past arrived without warning. A room full of dust. A clock ticking too loud. A child's shoe near a doorway. The old sentence he had carried for years, a few minutes sooner. Nathan closed his eyes once, opened them, and came back to Ashford, to the rain, to Sadie, to the hand behind the counter. "I cannot wait," he said into the phone. The operator asked what he meant. Nathan was already moving back to his truck. In the glove compartment, he kept a small emergency rescue tool, the kind with a seat belt cutter and a glass breaker, something he had bought years ago after seeing how fast ordinary nights could turn. He returned to the door and spoke clearly into the phone. "I am going to open a lower corner of the glass to reach the lock. I will keep clear of the child." Sadie backed away as if she understood. Nathan wrapped his jacket sleeve around his forearm, turned his face slightly, and used the tool with one controlled motion near the bottom edge of the door. The glass cracked into a safe opening large enough for his hand to reach through. Rain and cold air slipped into the clinic. He cleared the edge carefully with the sleeve, found the inside latch, and unlocked the door. Sadie pushed forward but stopped at the threshold, waiting for him to enter first. Nathan stepped inside and felt the stillness of the clinic wrap around him. It smelled of clean floors, animal shampoo, and something electrical in the air. "Hello," he called. "My name is Nathan. I am here to help." From behind the counter came a tiny voice, thin as a thread. "Sadie?" The shepherd slipped past Nathan then, not running, not barking, just moving straight to the counter with a purpose that made the room feel less dark. Nathan followed, kneeling beside the fallen shelf, and saw the child curled in the narrow space beyond it, pale, frightened, alive. Sadie lowered herself beside the little girl and touched her nose to the child's hand. Nathan's voice softened. "Stay with me, sweetheart," he said. "Help is on the way." Nathan kept his body between the little girl and the fallen shelf, careful not to move anything too quickly. The emergency operator's voice stayed in his ear, steady and close. Asking questions he answered in the shortest words he could manage. The child was awake, breathing, scared, maybe 9 years old. No visible bleeding. Trapped behind the reception counter by a shifted storage shelf and scattered supplies. The clinic's emergency light blinked every few seconds, washing the floor in a faint red pulse before fading back to gray. Sadie lay beside the girl with her chest pressed gently against the child's arm, not crowding her, only warming her, anchoring her to the room. "What is your name?" Nathan asked softly. The girl blinked up at him. Her cheeks were pale, her brown hair tangled around the collar of a yellow raincoat. "Lily," she whispered. Nathan nodded as if that name had been the one thing he needed to hear. "All right, Lily. I am Nathan. That is Sadie, and she did a very good job finding help." Lily's eyes moved to the shepherd. Her fingers curled weakly into Sadie's damp fur. "She got out," Lily said. "I told her to go." Nathan glanced toward the hallway, then back to Lily. "You sent her?" Lily gave the smallest nod. The lights made a loud pop. The shelf fell. "I tried to crawl out, but it hurt to move." Sadie pushed the back door until it opened a little. "I told her to find Mom." Her voice thinned on the last word. Nathan felt the room tighten around him. "Your mom is Dr. Carter?" Lily nodded again. "She thought I was at Mrs. Bell's house. I came back because Peanut was crying." Nathan followed her eyes toward a carrier under the side table. Inside, a tiny orange kitten sat wrapped in a towel, eyes wide, unharmed, watching the room as if it too understood the seriousness of silence. Nathan let out a slow breath. A child had returned to help something smaller, and a dog had gone out into the rain to help her. That was the whole story, simple enough to break a man open. "You did a brave thing," he said. "Now we are going to do the next brave thing, which is stay still until the medics arrive." Lily swallowed. "Am I in trouble?" Nathan's face softened. "No, sweetheart. You are not in trouble with me." Sadie lifted her head and looked toward the front door. In the distance, sirens began to thread through the rain, faint at first, then growing. Nathan stayed beside Lily, one hand holding the phone, the other resting on the edge of the counter so she could see he was not leaving. "Listen to me," he said. "We are going to count breaths together. In for 3, out for 3, just like waves coming in and going back out." Lily tried. Her first breath shook. The second came easier. Nathan counted in a low voice, slow and even, while Sadie placed her chin across Lily's sleeve. Outside, blue and red lights began to flicker across the clinic windows, turning the wet sidewalk into moving color. Footsteps rushed to the door. Officer Mark Ellis entered first, followed by 2 paramedics in dark rain jackets carrying medical bags. Nathan raised one hand. "She is behind the counter. Conscious. Possible leg injury. Shelf shifted, but stable." The paramedics moved with practiced care. They asked Lily questions, checked her pulse, and worked around the fallen shelf without panic. Nathan stepped back only when they needed room, but Lily's fingers tightened in Sadie's fur. "Do not let her go," she whispered. Nathan looked at the shepherd, soaked, shivering, still refusing to move away from the child she had saved. "I will not," he said. And for the first time in years, when he promised not to leave someone behind, Nathan believed he could keep it. Dr. Emily Carter arrived before the ambulance doors had fully opened, her car stopping hard against the curb with one headlight catching the rain like a white blade. She stepped out wearing a long gray raincoat over pajama pants and clinic shoes, her dark hair pulled into a loose knot, her face emptied by fear before she even reached the door. Officer Ellis tried to slow her with one hand, speaking gently, but she saw Lily through the clinic window, and the sound that left her was not a word. It was a mother's heart finding its way through panic. Nathan stood just inside the waiting room, holding Sadie's wet collar with 2 fingers, not restraining her, only keeping her close while the paramedics lifted Lily carefully onto a stretcher. Lily was awake now, wrapped in a foil blanket that caught the emergency lights in flashes of silver. Her face was still pale, but her eyes opened when Emily came in. "Mom," she whispered. Emily knelt beside the stretcher and took her daughter's hand, as if the whole world had narrowed to those 5 small fingers. "I am here, baby. I am right here." Lily's mouth trembled. Peanut was crying. "I only came back for a minute." Emily pressed her forehead to Lily's hand, eyes closed, breathing through the kind of relief that hurts before it heals. "We will talk about that later," she whispered. "Right now, you are safe." Sadie gave a soft whine. Lily turned her head toward the sound. "Sadie found him," she said. She went outside and found the Marine. Emily looked up then, really seeing Nathan for the first time. He stood with rain still dripping from his jacket, one sleeve wrapped around his forearm, blue and red light moving across his face. There was nothing heroic in his posture. He looked tired, careful, almost embarrassed to be standing in the center of someone else's miracle. "You opened the door," Emily said. Nathan glanced at the lower corner of the glass, where rainwater had gathered near the frame. "I heard her," he said, nodding toward Lily. "Sadie made sure I did." Emily looked down at the shepherd. Sadie stepped forward slowly, ears low now, all urgency gone, replaced by exhaustion. Emily reached for her with one hand while still holding Lily with the other. "Good girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Oh, Sadie, good girl." The shepherd leaned into Emily's palm for 1 second, then turned back to Lily as if her work was not finished until the child left safely. The paramedics rolled the stretcher toward the door. Lily reached out, fingers searching. Nathan guided Sadie close enough for the girl to touch her head. "She can come with us?" Lily asked. One paramedic smiled gently. "She can ride with your mom, right behind us." Lily looked at Nathan. "You too." The question landed harder than he expected. Nathan had spent years leaving rooms when the emergency ended. He knew how to step back, give a report, disappear before gratitude could find him. But Lily was looking at him like he belonged to the circle of people who stayed. Before he could answer, Emily spoke quietly. "Please come to the hospital. I need to know who to thank when my hand stops shaking." Nathan looked at Sadie. The shepherd's amber eyes met his, steady and certain, as if she had already decided. Outside, the rain was easing. Main Street glowed beneath the emergency lights, wet and trembling, but no longer empty. Nathan nodded once. "I will follow." As Lily was carried out into the night, Sadie walked beside the stretcher, close enough that her shoulder brushed the blanket. Emily walked on the other side, one hand never leaving her daughter. Nathan followed a few steps behind them, past the broken lower corner of the door, past the waiting room chairs, past the tiny orange kitten safe in its carrier. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back into the clinic. The room that had felt so dark when he entered now seemed different, not because the lights were brighter, but because the silence had been answered. For years, Nathan had remembered the sound of being too late. Tonight, in a small-town veterinary clinic, he heard something else. A child breathing, a mother crying with relief, a dog's paws tapping softly beside the stretcher, and beneath all of it, the quiet mercy of a door that opened in time. The hospital in Ashford sat on a hill above town, small by city standards, but bright enough that night to look like a lighthouse in the rain. Nathan followed the ambulance in his pickup with both hands on the wheel, keeping a respectful distance from the flashing lights ahead. Emily's car stayed between them, and through her rear window, he could see Sadie sitting upright in the back seat, her wet silhouette steady as stone. She did not lie down. She did not sleep. Even after all she had done, the shepherd kept watch. By the time they reached the emergency entrance, the rain had become a mist, drifting through the parking lot in pale sheets beneath the lamps. Lily was taken inside with Emily walking beside her, speaking softly, one hand on the stretcher rail. Sadie tried to follow through the sliding doors, but stopped when a nurse gently raised a hand. Animals usually cannot come past this point, the nurse said, apologetic but firm. Lily heard it and turned her head. Her voice was small, tired. Please. She kept me calm. Emily looked from her daughter to the nurse, then to Sadie, whose ears had lowered as if she understood the line she was not allowed to cross. Before anyone argued, an older doctor stepped into the hallway, his white coat open over blue scrubs. He studied the scene for one quiet second. The child, the mother, the soaked dog, and Nathan standing behind them with rain still on his shoulders. Let her stay nearby until we know more, he said. She earned a few exceptions tonight. So Sadie was given a clean towel and a place just outside the exam room door, where Lily could see her through the opening. Nathan sat across from her in a plastic chair, elbows on his knees, watching water drip from the hem of his jacket onto the polished floor. Emily disappeared inside with Lily. Voices moved softly behind the curtain. A blood pressure cuff, a monitor beep, the careful language of nurses making fear smaller by naming each step. Sadie rested her chin on her paws, eyes fixed on the room. Nathan looked at her and spoke under his breath. You do not quit, do you? Her ears twitched, but she did not look away. An hour passed, then another. Officer Ellis came by to take Nathan's statement, standing near the vending machines with a notebook in hand. Nathan described the dog outside the clinic, the sound behind the counter, the locked door, the call, the careful opening of the glass. He kept his words plain. Facts were easier than feelings. When Officer Ellis finished writing, he closed the notebook and looked at Nathan with a softness that did not belong in a report. You probably saved her life. Nathan's eyes stayed on the floor. Sadie did. Maybe, the officer said. But Sadie needed someone who would listen. The words settled too close to the old wound. Nathan did not answer. Around 3 in the morning, Emily stepped out from the exam room. Her face was tired, pale, but no longer hollowed by terror. Sadie stood immediately. Nathan stood too. Emily looked at them both, and her eyes filled before she could speak. She is going to be okay, she said. The sentence was quiet, almost fragile, but it changed the air. Sadie moved first, pressing her head against Emily's leg. Emily bent down and wrapped both arms around the shepherd's neck, holding her with the kind of gratitude that had no clean edges. Nathan turned slightly toward the dark hospital window. In the reflection, he saw himself standing behind them, a man who had spent years believing the worst moments always ended the same way. But tonight had not ended that way. Tonight, a child was alive. A mother could breathe again. A dog had crossed the rain and found him at the exact minute he was needed. Emily looked up at him. Lily wants to see you, she said. Nathan hesitated, then followed her into the room. Lily lay under a white blanket with a small bandage on one arm and a tired smile on her face. Sadie stepped carefully to the bedside and rested her muzzle near Lily's hand. Lily looked at Nathan. I told Sadie to find Mom, she whispered. But she found you. Nathan swallowed against the ache in his throat. She knew better than both of us. Lily's fingers moved gently over Sadie's fur. You were not late, she said. The room went still. Nathan looked at the little girl, then at the shepherd beside her, and something inside him broke open without pain. Not fixed, not finished, just open enough for Grace to enter. By morning, the rain had left Ashford clean and quiet, with low clouds resting against the pine-covered hills and water shining along the edges of Main Street. Nathan did not remember walking back to his truck after leaving Lily's hospital room. He only remembered the sound of her words following him through the hallway. "You were not late." They were 5 simple words, spoken by a tired child under a white blanket, but they moved through him like light entering a house that had been boarded up for years. He sat in the hospital parking lot until sunrise, hands folded over the steering wheel, watching nurses change shifts beneath the covered entrance. Sadie had stayed inside with Emily and Lily until the doctor finally promised that the child would be released later that day with rest, care, and a story no one in Ashford would forget. Nathan should have driven home. He should have slept. Instead, when the first pale light touched the hospital windows, he returned to the clinic. The front door looked different in daylight. The lower corner of the glass was covered with cardboard and clean tape now, placed there by Officer Ellis before dawn. Rainwater had dried in thin trails along the frame. Inside, the waiting room held the evidence of the night in small, ordinary ways. A towel on the floor where Sadie had stood, a few scattered brochures stacked back on the counter, Peanut the orange kitten asleep in his carrier beneath a warm lamp. Nathan stood outside with his hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the door he had opened and the life that had been waiting behind it. The old guilt came quietly, because guilt always knew the side entrances. It reminded him that one good night could not rewrite another. It reminded him that some names still belonged to silence. But this time, the memory did not swallow him whole. This time, there was another truth beside it. He had heard the sound. He had listened to the dog. He had opened the door. Around 8 o'clock, Emily's car pulled up beside the curb. Sadie was in the back seat again, dry now, brushed clean, a red collar bright against her sable coat. When Emily opened the door, the shepherd stepped out and went straight to Nathan, not rushing, not excited, just certain. She pressed her head against his thigh and stood there as if checking whether he was still the same man from the rain. Nathan placed one hand between her ears. "You knew where to find me," he said softly. Emily came around the car carrying a paper cup of coffee and a tired smile. "Lily is sleeping. She made me promise to tell you that Peanut is also doing fine." Nathan looked through the clinic window at the kitten. That matters. To her, it mattered enough to come back. Emily's smile faded into something more thoughtful. "Sadie belonged to my brother before she came to us. He trained search dogs for years. After he passed, she stopped working, at least officially. I thought she was done saving people." Sadie leaned harder into Nathan's leg, as if disagreeing with the word done. Nathan looked down at her. "Maybe some dogs do not retire from loving people." Emily studied him for a moment. "And maybe some Marines do not either." He almost looked away, but did not. The morning traffic began to stir behind them. A delivery truck rolled past. A woman walking a spaniel slowed down to stare at the taped door, then moved on. The town was waking into an ordinary day, unaware of how close the night had come to ending differently. Emily unlocked the clinic and stepped inside. Nathan followed without being asked. Together they righted the last fallen shelf, swept the waiting room, and moved Peanut's carrier to a safer corner. Sadie walked the room slowly, sniffing each place where fear had been, then settled by the front door in a patch of new light. Nathan watched her sit there, calm and bright-eyed, no longer waiting outside, no longer pleading through glass. For the first time in years, he understood that healing was not the same as forgetting. Healing was standing in the place that once held fear and finding it filled with mourning. Over the next week, the story moved through Ashford the way small-town stories always do, quietly at first, then everywhere at once. The woman at the gas station said she had seen the shepherd sitting in the rain, but thought the clinic owner was inside. The night clerk at the motel remembered the pickup stopping by the curb. Officer Ellis gave no dramatic interviews, only a careful statement that a child was safe because a dog refused to leave and a passerby chose to listen. Nathan did not read the comments. He did not answer unknown numbers. He spent his mornings at his late mother's house, opening windows that had been closed too long, and his afternoons at the clinic, helping Emily replace damaged shelves, repair the reception counter, and measure the door for new glass. He told himself it was practical. He knew how to use tools. Emily needed help. Lily needed quiet. Sadie needed routine. But the truth was softer than that. Every time he walked into Cole Veterinary Clinic, the tight place in his chest loosened a little. Lily came home on Thursday wearing a purple jacket and moving carefully, but smiling when she saw Peanut's carrier near the sunny window. Emily hovered, trying not to hover, and Sadie walked so close to Lily that her shoulder nearly brushed the girl's knee with every step. Nathan stood by the front desk holding a box of screws, unsure where to put his hands. Lily noticed and smiled. "You came back," she said. Nathan nodded. "I said I would help with the door." "Not the door," Lily said, as if adults missed obvious things all the time. "You came back to us." Emily looked down at the paperwork in her hands, but Nathan saw her eyes soften. He set the screws on the counter and crouched so he was closer to Lily's height. "I guess I did." Sadie sat between them, tail brushing the floor once, slow and satisfied. That afternoon, Lily showed Nathan the small recovery room where Peanut had been staying. The kitten, now stronger, pawed gently at the blanket inside his crate, making Lily laugh under her breath. It was a careful laugh, still thin from the hospital, but real enough to brighten the room. Nathan felt that sound land somewhere deep. He had known commands shouted over engines, radios crackling in bad weather, the heavy silence after hard news. He had almost forgotten that healing could sound like a child laughing at a kitten too small to know it had been part of a miracle. Later, while Emily checked appointments and Lily rested in the office with Sadie curled beside the couch, Nathan stood outside, facing the broken door. The replacement glass would not arrive until Monday. For now, cardboard covered the lower corner, taped neatly, with a towel placed along the sill to keep out the wind. He ran his fingers over the taped edge and thought about how strange mercy was. It did not always arrive dressed like strength. Sometimes it arrived soaked from rain, with muddy paws and amber eyes, asking a stranger to hear what everyone else had missed. Emily stepped beside him with 2 cups of coffee. "You do not have to keep coming here," she said gently. Nathan accepted the cup. Steam rose between them in the cold afternoon air. "I know, but you will." He looked through the window. Sadie had lifted her head from the office couch and was watching him through the clinic, calm as a promise already made. Nathan took a slow breath. "Yes," he said, "I think I will." By the second Monday after the storm, the new glass arrived wrapped in brown paper and carried by 2 men from the hardware store on Ashford Avenue. Nathan was already waiting outside the clinic with a tool belt around his waist, a paper cup of coffee cooling on the windowsill, and Sadie sitting beside the door as if supervising the work. The morning was bright but chilly, the kind of Oregon spring day where sunlight touched everything without quite warming it yet. Emily held the door from inside while the men lifted the panel into place, and Lily watched from a chair near the front desk with Peanut curled in a blanket on her lap. The kitten had grown bold enough to bat at the edge of Lily's sleeve, and every time he did, she smiled like the world had become simple for a second. Nathan measured, tightened, adjusted, then stepped back as the new pain caught the light. For a moment, the clinic reflected all of them at once. Emily in her white coat, Lily in her purple jacket, Sadie with her red collar, Nathan standing slightly apart, unsure whether he belonged in the picture. Then Sadie moved. She crossed the floor, pressed her shoulder against his leg, and stayed there. Emily noticed, but said nothing. Some truths asked to be seen quietly. When the hardware men left, the clinic felt strangely new, though everything inside was familiar. The row of waiting chairs, the counter with its little bell, the framed photos of pets on the wall, the warm lamp over Peanut's carrier. Emily swept a few specks of dust from the entryway, while Nathan gathered the last strips of cardboard and tape that had covered the broken corner for days. He held them in his hands longer than necessary. That cardboard had kept out the wind. It had marked the place where fear entered and help followed. Lily came over slowly, carrying a small sticker sheet covered in paw prints, stars, and one bright-eyed cartoon German shepherd. "Can I put this one on the door?" she asked. Emily glanced at Nathan, then nodded. "Just one, low enough for Sadie to see." Lily peeled the sticker carefully and placed it near the lower corner of the glass, not hiding the past, but blessing the place where it had changed direction. Sadie sniffed it, then sneezed, and Lily laughed so suddenly that Nathan felt his chest tighten with relief. He turned toward the window to hide his smile, but Emily caught it anyway. "You know," she said softly. We could use someone around here on Saturdays. Fixing things, walking nervous dogs, carrying heavy bags of food. As if summoned by the verdict, Sadie sat at Nathan's feet and leaned against his boot. Nathan looked down at her, then around the clinic. For years, he had measured life by departures. Faces left behind, rooms cleared out, names folded into memory. He had thought returning home meant facing everything he had failed to become. But here, in a small veterinary clinic with new glass shining in the doorway, returning felt like something else. Not a sentence, an invitation. Saturdays, he said. Emily smiled. Lily clapped once, careful but delighted, and Sadie gave one low, approving sound from deep in her chest. Outside, Main Street moved in its ordinary rhythm. Tires on wet pavement, a mail truck at the corner, wind brushing through the young leaves along the sidewalk. Inside, Nathan picked up the broom and began sweeping the last bits of dust toward the light. He did not know yet that he would keep coming back long after the door was fixed. He only knew that for the first time in a long while, the thought of staying did not frighten him. Weeks later, Ashford remembered the storm in softer colors. The rain became a story people told over coffee. The emergency lights became a line in the newspaper. The broken glass became new glass, clean and bright, catching the morning sun every time someone opened the clinic door. But for Nathan, the miracle was not in what the town remembered. It was in what stayed. Every Saturday, he arrived before the first appointment with coffee for Emily, a small treat for Sadie, and a calmness he had not known how to carry before. He fixed loose hinges, repaired kennel latches, walked nervous dogs behind the clinic, and sat with older pets whose owners needed one more quiet minute before leaving. He learned that gentleness had its own discipline. He learned that not every rescue came with sirens. Some came with a hand resting beside a trembling paw, a soft voice in a waiting room, a door held open for someone afraid to enter. Lily healed too. Her steps grew steadier, her laugh fuller, and Peanut became the unofficial ruler of the front desk, batting at appointment cards and sleeping inside an empty supply box as if it were a throne. Sadie never stopped watching over her. She followed Lily from room to room, patient and alert, but she also began choosing Nathan in small ways. She sat beside him when the clinic grew busy. She pressed her head against his knee when his eyes went distant. She walked him to the door at closing, then waited until he promised to come back. One more morning, Emily hung a small framed piece near the entrance. Inside was a smooth shard from the old door, cleaned and placed against white cloth. Beneath it, in careful black letters, were the words, "Some doors break so someone can live." Nathan stood before it for a long time. He thought about the night he had first seen Sadie through rain and headlights, about Lily's small voice behind the counter, about the years he had spent believing grace was something that arrived for other people. Sadie came to his side and sat down, her amber eyes reflected in the new glass. Lily stepped beside them and placed another little German Shepherd sticker near the lower corner of the door, right where the old opening had been. "So she remembers," Lily said. Nathan looked down at Sadie. The dog lifted her head, calm and certain, as if remembering was not something to fear anymore. Outside, Ashford moved through an ordinary day. Cars passed. Wind stirred the young leaves. Somewhere down the street, a church bell marked the hour. Nathan rested his hand on Sadie's head, and this time, when silence came, it did not feel empty. It felt like peace. Some nights are not meant to be forgotten. They are meant to become a doorway. And sometimes, the one who leads you there walks on four paws, through rain, straight toward the light.